What if the only one who truly understood what was about to happen couldn't speak? They called me Jenny, not ship's cat, not rat catcher, though I was very good at that. Jenny. I had a place, a routine, a corner of warmth near the galley where the air smelled like broth and bread and fish bones. And I had kittens, small, blind, always searching for heat. And I had a feeling I could not shake. You already know the ship. Everyone does. Titanic, steel giant, pride of the White Star Line, launched in Belfast, built to cross the Atlantic in comfort and power, nearly 882 feet long, engines that never really slept. But I knew her differently. I knew her by sound. Before the passengers arrived, before the polished shoes and silk dresses and laughter echoing through first class, I heard her bones. The low groan of steel plates settling against each other. The deep, restless thrum of engines being tested. A vibration underfoot that never quite evened out. Ships are supposed to feel balanced. Even tied to dock, they rest. This one didn't. And that was the first thing that stayed with me. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been somewhere that looked perfect, but felt wrong? That was Titanic. Now, I wasn't alone in noticing things. Ships have moods. Ask anyone who's lived on one long enough. They creak differently, settle differently. Even tied to dock, they behave. This one never did. And the men felt it too. Not all of them. Not the ones dazzled by polished brass and electric lights. But the old hands. The ones who listened more than they spoke. Sailors don't laugh at instinct. Not really. Not when they've watched clear skies turn violent without warning. Not when they've seen strong ships vanish like they were never there. They watch the horizon. They watch the weather. And sometimes, they watch the animals. Because animals don't second-guess danger. We don't debate it. We don't call it coincidence. We leave. And that's when he started watching me. His name was Jim Mulholland. A fireman. A stoker. One of the men who fed the ship its appetite for coal deep below the decks.
Hello, Jenny.
Hands blackened, skin always warm from the furnace glow, clothes carrying the sharp, dry scent of coal dust and iron. He lived where the ship was loudest, where Titanic stopped being beautiful and became something else, functional, demanding, hungry. Titanic had 29 boilers, 159 furnaces. It took hundreds of men working in shifts to keep steam pressure high enough to drive her engines. 2 massive reciprocating engines and a central turbine turning 3 propellers. Power like that doesn't whisper. It roars. And Jim knew the difference between power and strain. He noticed me because I broke my pattern. 3 days before the ship sailed, I started moving my kittens, one by one. Carefully, quickly, no hesitation. Down gangways, past boots and crates and shouting men loading supplies, past ropes thick as limbs and the sharp smell of tar and salt, away from the ship. Let me ask you this. Why would a creature built to seek shelter abandon it? Jim didn't laugh. He didn't call it nothing. He watched. One trip, then another, until there were no kittens left on the ship. And something settled in his mind that he couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore. Because below deck, things didn't feel right to him either. Not in a way he could report, not something you write down, just pressure, noise, a sense that everything was working harder than it should. And above deck, everything looked perfect. April 10th, 1912, Southampton, passengers boarded with trunks and tickets and certainty. First class glittered. Electric lights glowed warm against polished wood. The grand staircase rose like something from a dream. Second class was comfortable. Third class, crowded but hopeful. More than 2,200 people would eventually be aboard by the time Titanic left Queenstown and headed into the open Atlantic. Laughter, music, movement. Jim was meant to be part of it. He had his place, his shift, his reason to board, but he kept thinking about the cat. About me, about what I had done without hesitation. Sailors carry superstition the way others carry maps. Because the ocean doesn't forgive certainty, it punishes it. So Jim made a decision that didn't make sense to anyone else. He walked away. No speech. He just didn't board. And Titanic sailed without him. Now here's the part people think they understand. They think the danger began when the iceberg appeared. It didn't. Let me ask you something. What if the real danger was how perfect everything felt? By April 14th, Titanic was deep in the North Atlantic. Ice warnings had come in from other ships throughout the day. Messages about drifting ice fields and bergs along their route. But Titanic maintained speed, around 22 knots, fast, confident. In the crow's nest, the lookouts scanned the horizon. As fate would have it, they didn't have their binoculars that night. Just eyes, cold air, darkness. At 11:40 p.m., they saw it. An iceberg. Dead ahead. The warning bell rang. Iceberg right ahead! The ship turned, but not enough. The iceberg didn't crash through Titanic. It brushed her. A glancing blow. But beneath the waterline, steel plates buckled. Rivets failed. Seams opened, water poured in. 6 watertight compartments began to flood. Titanic was designed to stay afloat with 4, not 6. That was the moment the ship was already lost. And almost no one understood it yet. Let me ask you this. How many people that night felt something and ignored it? Because I didn't. I was gone. Far from the noise, far from the lights, curled around my kittens, listening to a different kind of silence. Alive. On the ship, time stretched and then collapsed. 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's all it took. Distress rockets fired into a sky that didn't answer. The band played to keep people calm. Lifeboats were lowered. Too few, many not filled to capacity. Cold crept in. Water rose. And then, in the early hours of April 15th, 1912, Titanic broke and disappeared beneath the surface. More than 1,500 people didn't survive. And Jim Mulholland stood on solid ground, breathing, alive, unburned by coal, untouched by freezing water. Years later, someone asked him why. Why he didn't stay on the most famous ship in the world. Why he walked away from certainty. He didn't talk about engineering. He didn't talk about fear. He said something simpler. The cat told me not to. Not a voice. Not a warning anyone else could hear. Just a choice. A small, quiet moment where he decided to trust something most people ignore. So let me ask you one last thing. If you had seen what he saw, would you have listened? History remembers the ship. History forgets who warned them.